California Games. Now the summer will surely last forever. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sean.
And that's it. But the crew will surely last forever. Right, Sean?
I think nothing can tear us apart. Never gonna tear us apart.
There you go. Beautiful In Excess song. But also, just want to go back to that back cover for a second of the summer will surely last forever. It's a bit poetic as we are seeing, the end of the summer now in 2021. But California Games promises us that as long as we have the cartridge in our consoles, if we're playing in winter, it's practically summer.
Yeah, this game, it does a very medium job at creating a vibe, and I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah, so I don't want to pretend that this is some Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, picturing of California in any way, shape, or form, but without talking about the actual gameplay, do you feel like they sold you on the idea of this is happening in California and has California vibes? Have you yourself been to California, Sean?
I've never been to California. It's on my list. But I think that, the pop culture idea of California is pretty ingrained in everybody's heads. They tried to make the title card the license plate, but they didn't get the font right. So I'm like, that's off to a bad start. They had the idea, they had the right idea, but they just didn't quite execute on that title card.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think you hit it on the head there when you said the pop culture image of California. That's really what this is. I don't think anything in this game sells me on the idea that it might be taking place on a particular beach in California, or that these are things exclusive to California. But in the late 80s, especially with Saved by the Bell and stuff like that, I think this is people's idea of California. And now, if you're in New York or rural Oklahoma, you can have that feeling of being in California encapsulated in sports video game format.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. That's very generous of you.
Very generous of me, but I guess what I meant is when you play a baseball game, right? And you play at a California stadium, right? For the Los Angeles Angels or Dodgers or something. Mm-hmm. You never feel oh, I'm in California now, even though that's literally a real location in California.
Yeah, this, they've got the famous skateboarders of Los Angeles. They've got the famous hacky sackers of San Francisco. You surf at the beach, which I think is a town in California. It basically hits all the strokes there.
Yeah, and like you said, this is basically just another one of those games where we go down the line and play a series of little sports mini games that are all under the same theme. So this is made by Epix, and they made winter games, which we absolutely hated. They made summer games, which we liked, and I guess now they're hey, how about California games? I'm not sure where spring and winter went, or why California was chosen over any
California
location.
Season. Yeah.
Right, but don't you remember we also played world games, and I feel that could have just included California, but they doubled down on the idea that most of these sports happen exclusively in California, or that they're trying to encapsulate what California is via sports.
I think you couldn't have said it better right there.
So how do we feel about these games, though, right? We all know that we didn't like winter games. That episode's pretty famous now, but these games seem to just be
mini games,
or yeah, exactly. I don't know. How do you play these games, Sean? Do you actually go through the gauntlet of going through each of them and gaining your scores and checking out what your high score is at the end, or do you just say I'm just gonna play each mode and I kind of just go into practice mode or tackle each one individually? Have you ever experienced the full game from beginning to end in one of these?
Yeah, that's how I usually do these, because it's kind of a genre in itself now, even though I think, yeah, that one company made all of them.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll play through the whole tournament with no, like, I think the previous games, you could be the only contestant, but in this one, you can be the only contestant, and that basically just serves as like a demo for each mode, because you win the trophy each time. But yeah, so I did one by one. If there's a game that I think is a little bit deeper, or at least a little bit more interesting, I will, after I do the little sampler, I'll go back into a practice mode, or just like the single event mode, and play around with that. So I did that in here as well.
And so let's just go down the line here. We've got skateboarding up first, where not I guess kind of like Skate or Die, right? Skate or Die was like a whole game based around skateboarding, but in this one you have that half pipe mode, which is kind of similar, but the controls are a lot different. Sean, what'd you think of the controls here for skateboarding?
They were, I think, if I remember Skate or Die correctly, did it have a half pipe?
Yeah, it did have a half pipe.
Okay. I think I was able to perform a bit better in the previous one, because I don't remember being as frustrated by a half pipe as in this one. I was able to like get some speed going, because like your controls kind of reverse. Like you got to hold up and down in like a rhythmic fashion to gain some speed, which is kind of cool. Like it feels a little bit more tactile that way. But then when you try and do almost any trick, I just kept falling and eating dirt. I was able to do a couple of like the hand stalls, kind of accidentally. But if I tried to do any kind of spin, I wasn't doing very good. It's very hard to pull off tricks in this mode.
These games always seem to have that, though, Sean. There's always a weird timing mechanic that just doesn't translate well for me in any of these Epic's games. Like that's their biggest downflaw, is that let's talk about you were saying with the momentum of your skateboarding and how you have to like get higher is by when you're going up the half pipe, you hold the up button on the D-pad, and when you go down, you hold down. Now that's kind of like, it's like a pendulum thing. Like you have to think about where you are on the pendulum for that. And that made sense to me. And, at first I was like, oh, well, they could have just, done that for me, I suppose. But I liked having control over how much speed I was going to have. I could only do the kick turns in this one, which
could do the kick turns.
Yes, and that's the only thing I was able to do successfully. I was not able to even, hang like you were on the top of the half pipe or anything like that. Every time I tried that, it seemed like I was, they let you get the act of performing it. It shows that you've put the buttons in, but
you always bail.
Right, you always bail. You just didn't do the right thing at the last second, whatever that was supposed to be. Very frustrating experience, but I've noticed this a lot over and over again, so I don't know what it comes down to here for this kind of thing. Should they have just given you more leeway on that, and therefore, like, yeah, everybody scores lots of points, but then it becomes like a risk-reward factor where, like, you're not just rewarded for scoring points. You have to score a certain amount of points or, like, take bigger leaps, Like, I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think, like, performing tricks should have been so hard, because that's, like, the entirety of this event. You're not thrilled by just going up and down on the half pipe. I feel like that's the standard experience that we would expect movement in our games. I think the tricks is what you want to do, and so the fact that becomes kind of a a hard thing to pull off makes this particular skateboarding game not as fun as it could be, because you could just add more different kinds of tricks or more different inputs. But they should have given a larger input time to pull it off.
Yeah, I agree. I want to know what your secret was for doing the kick turns, because anytime I tried, because I was looking at the diagram in the manual for like, oh, this is what you do at this point in order to pull off this trick, and I thought I was doing it correctly, but every time I pressed the button to do this kick turn, which
Yeah.
I don't think anybody actually calls.
I don't know. Yeah,
But,
I thought it was just turning around.
yeah, I just fell off the board, and
Yeah.
the board went in a different direction as me. And yeah, so I want to know how you did that. I guess you want to know how I did the hand stall. It was just, I guess we had different rhythms. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how it works for the hand stalls or not, but for the kick turns, because of, that happens at the lower half of the half pipe, kind of before your body is vertical, you have to kind of do that where as you're going up the ramp, like beforehand, before you're going up the ramp, that's when you do the first half of the input, and then as you're turning around, you have to change the input. It's not like it's not like a 1-2. It's like a 1-2. Which made sense to me, but maybe that's why I wasn't able to pull off the air tricks, because every time I tried to do those, I felt like I was just not reactive enough, because it was basically showing me that no matter what I was going to do, I was going to screw up. Like I had lost control of my board.
I guess in this way, it's very similar to when I tried to skateboard when I was like 13 years old.
Yeah, you think you're going to just go out there and
Tony Hawk it up,
right? Yeah, like it's like yeah, Tony Hawk it up. But like even just like an ollie, you're like, all right, I'll start with the basics, whatever, and then you just never do that. You never get the board in the air.
I was able to ollie.
That's nice.
It wasn't very dependable, but I could do it once every 3 times.
So what's your air trick?
My air trick?
Like in the game, what was your trick to doing the air tricks?
I couldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. The never, I didn't mean to disappoint you.
Oh,
the handstand thing or whatever.
I guess I just felt whatever rhythm they wanted me to feel, and I just sort of held the button for as long as it felt like a person would be able to hold that position, and then I let go, and it worked. So I have no idea how to describe it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about like Skate or Die communicating better what you're doing and having fun with it too. But they also had a wider variety of tricks. So maybe, I don't know. it's only one game of like 7 in California games. So maybe they didn't have enough time to like put a bunch into the skateboarding. But I would think, skateboarding to me is like, that feels like I'm not sure about this, but it feels like it was invented in California. So like, why not go all out? If this is California games, why not go all out on the skateboarding? And they just didn't,
I'm almost positive that you're correct there. I think it very much was a Los Angeles outer, like the outskirts of Los Angeles sort of thing.
Yeah, the Lords of Dogtown.
Yeah.
All right, you feel good about skateboarding?
I feel good about skateboarding.
Great, because now I want to talk to you about a little game, well-known game called Footbag. I just don't know, maybe they do call it that on the West Coast. Maybe that's like a different thing, like maybe they call it Footbag.
Have you ever heard it at all like that? I've never heard that term.
I only know hacky sack.
Yeah. Maybe that's an East Coast thing. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. This is an East Coast, West Coast rivalry right
now.
Yeah. Footbag to me sounds like they're trying to make it into a sport, though. Like it's close enough to football. They're like, this is competitive. Hacky sack is a game you play with your friends where it's like Foursquare or something like that. This Footbag is like competitive freestyle hacky sack.
Yeah, when you look at this guy, he looks like an acrobat. Like he looks so serious. He's got like a technique. He's got a stance that I wouldn't really associate with hacky sack. And this actually was one of the this felt better. Like it almost felt good to play this game because the bag seems to have some physics to it. So I thought it was neat.
Yeah, I agree with you. The bag has some physics to the sense that like it won't just keep going straight up. That would be really boring.
Yeah.
So it does, like, even if you hit it straight on, it still does move ever so slightly to the left or right. which is good. I don't know how they calculate that, but whatever. And then, again, the timing here is more forgiving. If you want to hit it on your head or whatever, but miss, you still have a chance to like hit it with your foot, or even hitting it with your foot isn't like this precise input.
Yeah, there's like
where,
a hitbox.
Right, exactly. As long as your foot is up in the air and makes contact with the bag, doesn't really matter what happens next. But the best part about this game is all the different tricks you can do. Again, this is like learning everything that skateboarding didn't do, because I was like blown away by just like discovering new moves in a game that I thought really only had like you kick the bag and you hit it with your head. When I started like jumping and doing back turns, like you could do 180s or
I think that's called the Dizzy Dean.
Yeah. Oh, you remember? See, I was gonna try and think about like putting up the terms on the dock here, but I was like, wow, there's just so many. It'd be a waste of my time.
I know, they're really funny. There's the Jester that I got. I got like the full axle. Apparently, there's like a readout of all the of all the tricks that you did, but it also includes all the tricks that exist, which I think is a little presumptuous. It kind of reduces the amount of creativity that the sport of footbag can innovate. But I was only able to do like 3 or 4 of the tricks, and I don't even know what half of the other ones are.
Well, most of them are just like a combination of flipping your what do you want to? How do you say that? Like when you jump and now your back is turned to the screen, like
a 180 jump, a 180
right,
ground jump.
Most of these are 180 ground jump combinations with something else. And then also, like, it's a combination of where your foot is, too, though, because if you notice,
yes,
you can't control it, but based on the location of the bag and where you are, your foot will behave differently. So you kind of have to pay attention to that. And, that is definitely a risky thing to do, but is worth more points. Is that when you hit it with your foot, especially, like, if you stick your foot way out or whatever, that that bag goes flying to the other side, and for whatever reason, this guy plays on like his tippy toes. He like refuses to move any faster or just run. So you have to, which I guess is fine for a side.
He has grace, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure it's like the rules. You know how like race walking has rules where they can't run or jog. They specifically have to walk in a particular fashion. It's the same thing with footbag, I'm sure.
We have to find the nearest footbag commission.
Yes. And I also wasn't expecting to use my head so much in this game. Were you?
No, it was like the main use of body appendage for me, because it's such a big target.
Guy's got a big head.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what they said too when he
Oh
yeah,
God.
no, it's fine. When he came out as a baby, they were like, "Oh, he's got a big head. He'll be amazing at footbag." But yeah, you're right. We're done with footbag. We can't go any further with it. Let's talk about surfing. Something that I'm sure they do in California, but I would think that would be saved for Hawaii games.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think it's equally owned by both states.
California practically owns Hawaii anyway.
Yeah, is that based on anything, or are you just saying that?
You know how, like, New Yorkers have Long Island to go vacation out to, like, the Hamptons?
They just go way out to Hawaii?
Yeah, they just go way out to Hawaii, and they just have, like, rental property there, and they don't interact with any of the locals. It's great.
Wow, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm sure it's a real nightmare for the people that live there, the people that go and notice it. Anyway, surfing is... a Sean verified California sport, and I'm willing to allow that because I'm also pretty confident that like there's any even out here on the East Coast, like where all the beaches are, there will be some surfing.
I mean, and where was Point Break? Like, where was that set? Was that California?
Sure.
I think
If you want it to be,
then I think my point stands.
there you go. So what'd you think of surfing, though, Sean? This one has the, it's just you, and the judges are grading you based on your performance. So did you feel like, a little performance shy around them? Were you trying to overperform for them, being like, oh, I got to score good for the judges and therefore wipe it out? Like, what was your thought process?
I really wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I thought that, like, I was kind of torn between, like, are they scoring me on how much air I can get off the lip of the wave, or is it how much time I can spend in the cylinder of the wave? I don't know what the term for that is in the biz. So I didn't know
The break, right?
the break, yeah, the point break. So I have no idea what they were actually scoring me on. I knew that if I fell, it would be bad, or if I just went off to the bottom right and it's just like you just leave the game. I knew that wasn't good for your score, but I got like a 6.7. I don't know if that's just like the default or if that's good. But yeah, I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of making sure that you stay on for as long of the duration as you can. Like, if you wipe out early, you're pretty much just not going to score well at all. And so you do have to, ride the wave for as long as possible. I think they give you like a really long time though, right? Like 90 seconds?
Yeah, I was in there for a while.
So it's a long time to ask of, but you can't just go in a straight line and just continue to ride it out. You have to do tricks. So it's like surviving as long as you can, plus the tricks that you do. And most of the tricks that you do are just building up some speed. You have to go down on the wave first, shoot back up, build up some speed, and hopefully while you're in the air, do a little spin or something.
Oh, I didn't even think to spin.
But you don't have to do even a full spin if you can, if you don't think you have the momentum for it. Any kind of turns are accepted and appreciated and all that. So I noticed that no matter how much speed I built up, the 360 spin was really hard. But just some like ups and downs, those were easy air grabs.
Yeah,
and stuff
all I have
like
to do
that.
is sort of like match the angle at which you approached.
Right.
On
For
your
some
return.
reason, like, the 360 one is like, and I don't know if this is just the game's graphics or not, but you ever get the feeling that like you went too high and now you're like beyond the wave and the game shows you that you've fallen like behind the wave?
Oh yeah, that does happen. I think that happens if you land like horizontally. If that's what I think it was, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, is that really a thing that could happen? Like, I'm
could sure it can
jump over the wave and go behind it. Like, maybe, yeah. I guess I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be possible. But in the game, it's because it just seems like a background, like one solid background. I was a little surprised to be like crashing behind the wave. I was like, oh, would have thought I would have crashed in front of it, like wiped out or something.
Well, I think like and it's too bad that Joe isn't here because he's our resident surfer. But I think like it's supposed to be showing like you're constantly going to the right, but obviously they can't really show that very well because they need to show the rest of what you're doing. So I think that's just a low fidelity there.
Yeah, and surfing also, we have proof that this game was never approved by any kind of California tourism board or anything like that, because every time you wipe out
you get the sharks
in front of the wave, the shark shows up, and I think that's just a misconception. Sharks don't just lurk in the water waiting for you to wipe out on your board, and then they're like, I'm really hungry for some man meat, and then they just eat you. Not all sharks are like that. Some sharks, sure.
It sounds
Jaws,
like
absolutely.
It sounds like you've been paid by the shark lobby to say things like this.
I could understand why you would say that, but and it's a shame Joe's not here because he's our
resident
local
Shark
Week expert.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I just thought that was strange. Like, couldn't they have included like just normal wipeouts too? Like the shark seems like a fun gag, a la like balloon fight. You know, like in balloon fight, occasionally there was that if you went too close to the water, that enemy would eat you. You know, and that was like a fun thing of like you didn't know where he was,
lava
right?
dragon or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I don't know where he is on the screen because he actually was programmed to just go back and forth. The shark, it's like. It's a cute thing once, and then it's like, oh, really? Like, the shark fucking murders me every time?
Well, he murders you off screen, so it's okay.
Yeah, all right. Going back to the judges real quick, though, I thought that was a good idea. That's a good feature. Something different to shake this up, so this way it's not just points based on, like, you know, the number of tricks you do or something like that. Like, technically it all still is, don't get me wrong. But, like, imagine if the footbag game was also just like a judges-based competition where you were just scored out of 10 based on, you know, how, you know, if you played footbag like a ballerina or not, you know, like the elegance of it all. So the surfing made me think that too of like, sometimes it's cool to just ride up the wave and ride down it because just surviving is also worth some points, right?
Yeah. And I think that it's, it kind of reminds me of sort of like the tier system in a lot of action games, or not, like the scoring system in modern action games, where it's not like you get points, but you get a rating. Like you got the S or you got the S++. Because I think like a rating out of 10, like in this, or a letter grade in like those action games I was talking about, they at least give you a frame of reference. Because I don't know what 50,000 points means in any context. It's just a arbitrary number, but if I got an A, that means I did pretty good.
Wow, you actually bring up a great point of, you know, and maybe we should talk about this for a minute because we're always talking about arcade games and high scores, but like, would you be inclined to go back and play some shmups or even like Donkey Kong if they were just going to give you like, you know, a D through S ranking on it instead of a score? Like if they just made it a little easier to define how well you're playing, would you consider going back?
I think like maybe it isn't a perfect 1-to-1 comparison because a lot of those games, you're not guaranteed to finish. And if you were to get an F, you probably just game overed. But if they were to say like you got unlimited continues and you only respawn, and there are respawn points, so you don't have to start over the whole level again. And they took how many times you had to respawn into consideration. Then yeah, I think a lot of shmups would be a lot more engaging if they did something like that.
Yeah, it's almost like it's on my want list now. You know, they do have retro achievements now, which if you have like I think if you play on certain emulators, you can connect to like retroachievements.org and it will register when you do things in an emulator, which is really cool. But now this is on the top of my want list for like arcade games because you're right. Like even in silly games like Sonic Adventure or whatever, like the fact that you get a score at the end of it is like, it's a nice incentive to replay some of those levels because you're not thinking about like, you know, what's 4 million points to me, like you said, you know, it's what's the difference between A and S?
Yeah.
Very cool. Good point there. Anything else you want to say about the judges, though? Should they have given an S?
Like an 11?
Yeah.
That'd be fun. I would love to see what it takes to get an 11 in surfing.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's an interesting point, though. You know, you're always keeping these conversations going because now you've got me thinking, like, for the people who really get any of these games right? Like, say, skateboarding or surfing. Say you've, like, mastered the California Games version of surfing. How much better of a time are you really having compared to the person who's just getting by? You know, like, I'm not talking about the person who can't play the game, because that's not a good time. But, like, you and I seemed like, you know, well, we were able to surf, and we were doing some, like, going up over the wave and stuff like that and coming back down, and we scored fairly okay with the judges. But does it really feel like unbelievable to be amazing at the surfing thing, to be like, I am the master of surfing on California
Yeah,
games.
you just said it. I mean, like, you would know better than me because you were one of the top-ranked, like, Guitar Hero players at one point, so you know more about mastery than I do. So, did that feel good? I mean, I was pretty okay at Guitar Hero. I would never get any leaderboard positions, but I had a lot of fun. Do you think you had more fun than me?
Yeah, that's an interesting point on fun. Like, there's a whole... I think we had the same amount of fun playing the game. If anything, I played it more stressful than you. But there's all of a sudden, like, there's a new kind of fun that isn't the same as playing the game. There's it's almost like I've unlocked a deeper game of the leaderboards, you know, something that the game wasn't really trying to make into a game, but is now in itself its own game. And, you know, I don't think California Games is quite the one-to-one with, you know, dance and rhythm competition games. But I see what you're saying is like, I don't think like the person who plays California Games and gets like the amazing high score has anything to really like show off for. But maybe they feel better that they've mastered it. Like, maybe there's more of a sense of achievement. But in terms of actual fun had, I would think that, you know, most people are just having the same level of fun.
Which in the case of surf is medium.
Right. A medium level of fun, unless you're really surfing, in which case go for it.
Oh, yeah. No, I meant like specifically this iteration of surfing.
Roller skating is up next, and this takes a, you know, it seems like we're getting like an A-B style of minigames here, where like skateboarding was score-based and you know, like let's just say judge-based or whatever. Footbag was a game that was more like, you know, hey, you've got this bag, do some fun tricks with it. Surfing went back to like the scoring-based kind of sports game, and now roller skating is like, it's an obstacle course.
Yep. This felt a lot like the skateboarding mini game in the Surf Designs game that we played before, where, I don't know, I think if you're going to do extreme sports, which I don't know if that was a term yet, I would still want it to be sort of that trick-based, like, run and trick-based gameplay, whereas I don't really like this whole like linear obstacle course thing. You can do tricks, you can do like spin jumps over cracks in the sidewalk and self-propelled bouncing balls, but I didn't really like get into this one as much as of course our favorite Footbag. It was very funny, and it did feel some weight to it whenever you tripped or you fell. Like that animation of her just face planting really oofs.
Yeah, it feels like it's a commentary on the state of sidewalks in or boardwalks maybe, but like, you know, like just a commentary on the state of that in California, because this is, again, one of those, like, obstacle courses where it's just, like, there's just too much wrong, you know?
Yeah.
We played Paperboy, okay?
Yeah, it's
but
like
that
a
game,
Paperboy.
like, that game leaned into it, you know? Like, I don't think anything about skateboarding, Footbag, or surfing made me think that when I was going to load up roller skating, it was just going to be, like, this crazy obstacle course of, you know, like you said, bouncing balls and, you know,
sand,
little, all sorts of weird things. But more importantly, I just feel like with these obstacle course levels in these NES games or whatever, especially for a sports oriented game, I feel like it's just trying to show you like how difficult it could be to like do those feats, right? So like, oh, it'd be, you know, like rollerblading is like really hard to have fun with if nothing's happening to you. So now imagine how hard rollerblading would be if all these things were happening to you. But I don't really want to play as like a roller skater having a tough time. Like I just played as a skateboarder who can barely land any tricks.
Yeah.
And a surfer who really can just ride the wave. So with roller skating, I'd like to actually like do some cool stuff, not be this novice roller skater.
Yeah, that's
who just
basically
constantly is
what it is.
tripping over themselves.
This is the first time in a video game, I think maybe ever, that I personally am better at this thing I'm doing than the video game I'm playing. Like, if I'm playing Tony Hawk, I'm doing crazy things that no human being can do. And even like Skate, you're basically playing as a competent skateboarder with a bit more realistic moveset. But in this, like, she can't hop over a crack in the floor. She can't hop over a little bit of a 3-degree incline ramp. It's insane. I've never heard of this kind of. I guess it's like Octodad, where it's just hard to live your own life, but you don't have a cartoonish body. I don't know.
No, yeah, it's a good point. But again, like Octodad was like leaning into that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
California Games, implied none of this going into it, especially being the the fourth game that we're talking about now. And I just think, like, even at this point, right, as 8-bit video games, like, it's all just escapism. So why make it like, this roller skater sucks? Like, I want to play as the best roller skater ever.
Yeah.
I already played as the best Italian plumber that ever lived.
That's true.
So let me get on a roller skater who, like, has no problem with 3-inch breaks in the sidewalk. The flying disc, which I would like to refer from this point onwards as Frisbee. But again, maybe that's just a East Coast, West Coast thing. I would hope they call it Frisbee over there.
I still think it's Frisbee there, but, never been.
This was my jam. And not even just in real life, but, like, I really like this game, even if it was simple. Like, maybe this is just showing what kind of gamer I am or whatever, but I felt like this was the right amount of being a unconventional sport, being easy to play, but then also, like, challenging you to be better than you were. You were talking earlier about the Guitar Hero or being just mastery of something. Like, this is something that I feel like anybody, once they understand the rules, they can throw the Frisbee and catch it. But now it's about, well, how far can you throw it? And do you plan to jump or dive backwards when you catch it? Like, this one was actually fun to challenge myself with, because I knew I could always start the setup, and then it was all about, like, completing what I had started.
I knew you were gonna like this one because it has a similar game mechanic setup as, like, golf. Like, you've got meters. There's like a place that you have to throw to, and a place to throw from, and there's always a better way to approach it than what you probably did. So I did like this one. I think it's a little oversimplified, but it does, even though I just said that, it has a little bit more depth than what you would think just looking at like the heads-up display and everything that you have to do. But yeah, I thought this was a good entry.
Yeah, maybe they should have given you, like, more control of the Frisbee while it's in the air, or even added, like, a randomized win factor. I'm not sure how much fun that would have been, because the idea is always to, like, throw as far and pull off as cool a trick as possible. But, like, I don't know, maybe if it was like a best of 3 or something, and the win was always randomized, that would be
the fact that there's only one attempt kind of sucks. But
yeah,
I think a best of 3 would be much more engaging there.
Right. And there's no dismissing it. Like, it is this very simple game, but it says something that, like, we're enjoying it. Like, sometimes maybe you have to, like, ditch all the complications and just, like, agree with the player of, like, having a good time. Like, I almost feel like Frisbee and Footbag are, like, the picks right now because they're simpler, enjoyable experiences that don't require like precise timing on these 8-bit graphics. Maybe it really does just come down to like what we're dealing with here when we're talking about these timing mechanics. Like I just feel like Epic's as a software developer just did not get their timing mechanics down properly, and that's why we're having less fun with skateboarding, surfing, roller skating, and more fun with these simpler games because they avoid that timing mechanic.
I think you're right. The ones that we've actually had positive things to say about have a bit more leeway. So yeah, I agree.
And last, we have BMX. And to be honest, Sean, by this point, I was just kind of exhausted. Like, I wasn't sure if I was even going to play BMX. And so I didn't.
You didn't play BMX?
I couldn't bring myself,
you just
knowing
stopped?
that it was knowing that it was probably going to be like skateboarding, but on a bike. I just thought, like, I don't know, Sean could help me out.
Oh, God. Okay. All right, so BMX is another obstacle course, but this one has it's a bit more. So in roller skating, you still had like the momentum of you have to sort of tap A or B, I don't remember, to gain speed, whereas this one, the big like physics puzzle, if you can call it that, is like when to try and catch air and try and do your tricks, because there are a lot of things that look like ramps, but the area right in front of it is itself a ramp, and you're gonna have a hard time landing, and you're probably gonna lose a lot of momentum. So there's a little bit of strategy in determining like when you're gonna like try and do a backflip or a kick out or whatever the hell these tricks are called. But it falls into the same pitfalls as roller skating, because it has way too many things just like littered in front of you. Like if this were an actual competition, there wouldn't just be tires laying in like just strewn about this course. It would be all about catching air and doing tricks. And
don't give the people at American Ninja Warrior ideas. They'll put tires on the courses.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, so I did like this better than roller skating because it wasn't just a flat plane, and there was some strategy for like when to do tricks, but it has the same problems, and it's nowhere near as good as Footbag.
Now, for any of our listeners who didn't play this game before listening to this episode, I just experienced firsthand, Sean, what they experienced listening to us talk about each of these games.
Is it completely frustrating?
That's what it comes down to, is like you did a great job explaining it, and I could picture it, but it was just not even frustrating. It was stressful. Why would I ever boot up this game? Like the things that you're describing and knowing the limitations of an NES, it's like, that's just like, for me, it's like, first off, I'm a little surprised to find out that BMX wasn't like skateboarding with the half pipe and stuff like that. I definitely wasn't expecting.
It was more like Excite Bike for some reason. Yeah.
So that's a little surprising, but I don't know. Like you didn't exactly sell it on me, but it's not your job to sell it to me. Like I think Epic's let me down here by being like, okay, last chance. Like there's still one last sports minigame from Epic's I can play on the NES, and I just kind of said pass.
That's incredible. I don't think we've ever gotten into a situation where the host of the show just decided not to play a key part of a game.
Well, we always try to spice things up on the show, right?
Absolutely.
You know, California Games appears in this book that people see all the time, I'm sure. There's other versions of it too, but it appears in 1001 video games you must play before you die. And now I don't have a statement. I don't have a statement about California Games, right? I have a statement about these books. 1001 video games, 1001 movies, 1001 books, which is hysterical in its own right, if you think about it. I just think, like, nobody should ever, like, getting one of these lists is just ridiculous. And it's a feat that you should, hopefully, by the first 100 entries, realize that nobody other than you, nobody other than you should decide the 1001 video games you should play in your life. Not because California Games is so bad that I don't think it's deserving. I don't know. I can't think of 1001 better games off the top of my head, but it's just so surprising to me that, like, you know, you would consider must play games based on someone else's recommendations, you know, like like a Critics' Choice, I understand, and stuff like that up to a certain point, you know, for like the best of the year or whatever. But 1001 games that you got to play because of a book, that's just crazy to me.
Well, yeah, the concept is ridiculous, but
yes.
I do think that, and maybe not specifically this series of, I don't know, meta books or whatever, but I do think that having a list of recommendations is still worthwhile as like a jumping off point for discovering things yourself. I mean, that's why we have an essential games list.
That's what I was gonna say, though. I think it has to be like more curated and thought out. So, like, I wouldn't even trust IGN to make like a 1001 video games you must play. You know, like, it has to be
much. Like 100 is too much.
Right, exactly. I think it has to be more like, these are the the best GameCube games or whatever, you know, like it has to be a more focused list, or like, here's the greatest RPGs, you know, it's like,
cool. I agree with
now
that.
That's a good starting place. When you have like 1001 video games across, 9 console generations and, so much obsolete
50
hardware.
50 genres and
yeah, and this game is no longer, like, you have to buy this on eBay, both the console and the game to play it properly. Like, I just don't think, like, what's the scope here, But it's the same thing with the movies one, Sean. We both love movies. We know how to make movies.
They're just pictures.
Right, they're just pictures. I would not recommend anybody to just, like, take me up on my movie recommendations just because, like, I feel like I'm a trusted authority. I would say, like, oh, you want to know, like, my top 10 horror films? Like, here they are, like, it's got to be something more streamlined.
Yeah. When was this book, the book that you're referencing, published? Was this like in the 90s or was it like recent? Why would this ever be on a modern list?
It was, believe it or not, scary enough, the book was published in 2010.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm just looking along here, and it's 1001 books you must read. Again, just crazy. You might only be able to read their book before you get to the other 1001. 1001 movies, 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Again, like, I can just tell you right now, like, yeah, you might discover new albums this way, but, like, nobody could just tell you, like, 1001 music albums you're gonna like or consider worth trying. And then the last one, interesting, 1,000 recordings to hear before you die.
Just like audio recordings of like found sound?
It's a list of recordings, mostly albums with some singles. So I can't tell what's different about it from the albums.
So it also includes singles and EPs. I guess they ran out of ideas.
Yeah. I don't know. What else could they do, though? 1001 what?
1,000
foods to try?
Yeah. 1,001 cities to visit before you die.
There you go. Beautiful. All right. With more than 300,000 copies sold in the first 9 months, California Games is the most successful Epic's game, outselling each of the 4 previous and 2 subsequent titles in the company's games series. Now, I think that's interesting because California Games arguably has the smallest reach, right? Like, summer games for anybody who likes summer. World games for people all over the world, like, not just Americanized. But somehow California Games winds up being the best-selling entry. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm not really I'm not really sure what to make of that. I guess because I imagine their biggest audience was Japan and the States, and I guess like the idea of California is a shared cultural touchstone. The fact that winter and summer being more general really didn't have that much of an effect. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass right now.
Yeah, no, I mean it's all speculation. Who could really say why it sold any better? Maybe it just was like it didn't have as much competition or whatever for the month. Like who really knows? But I just thought that was interesting that like the most limited scope one, like maybe that's just how it has to be sometimes. Maybe sometimes you really have to focus in to get the biggest audience, you know, like sell your niche.
Yeah. Next is Wisconsin Games.
There you go. So, you know, that brings me to my next point, Sean. What's the legacy of the Epix Games series? I mean, you know, today, what is the legacy? Is this just the same now as every version of Madden except like the most recently released one? Like, these games basically serve no purpose anymore, right? If you wanted to play skateboarding, surfing, you can't play footbag anywhere else as far as I know.
As far as I know, yeah.
If you wanted to skateboard or surf, you'd probably just be better off playing a more recent video game, right?
What's the legacy? Okay, I guess they're just novelties. I guess in the same way, maybe to a lesser extent as they were when they were released. Because the one thing that I always found appealing about these games is that they're just samplers. They try and take the most interesting mechanic they can out of each of these sports / games / pastimes, and yeah, try to gamify it, and you get like 5 minutes with each, and you have a mini game. So I guess that's sort of it. Like this is the birth of the mini game, as far as I know. That's their legacy.
No, that's a good point. And you know, like they served a much bigger audience and purpose back then. Like when these games were released, they probably were, you know, because they were released on so many different platforms. They probably were the best versions of skateboarding or surfing or whatever at that time. You know,
yeah.
I guess I'm just saying, like, you know, for the modern NES player, right, who has access to his NES and his PS5, right? I don't know how he found a PS5 in the stores, but let's just go with it. To that gamer, I feel like if they're going through the NES, like we do it because we're, you know, like that's what the show is set up for. We're going to play them all in chronological order or whatever. But for the guy who like buys California Games and feels like he has to experience it, you know, and I'm not picking on just California Games here. There's a whole bunch of games that are, you know, outdated now on the NES. I'm not sure when it becomes like owning these games just to say that you own them now for your NES versus, or, you know, or if they were like a part of your childhood versus like, you know, well, I really want to see what surfing was like, you know, for on the NES. Like, I really want to see how they played it back then. Like, I'm not so sure you're going to really like reap that experience from this.
Yeah, I don't think, aside from, again, like we keep pointing out, these very niche sport things that we haven't seen a video game version of before or since. Aside from those little entries, everything else has been improved upon and expanded in like to the point where the rest of it doesn't really serve any purpose anymore. So you can kind of ignore this game in the future.
Yeah, it's like Madden, you know. All the games at one point were the best version. I'm sure some years were controversial because like they were downgrades or whatever. But like, let's just say even if that was true, right? There's now no point to be like, I want to own every copy from Madden 2001 to now, and I'm going to play them all too. You know, like I'm going to play a full season in each one and just like go through it. It's like, that's a cool idea for a podcast. I could see how somebody would come to that conclusion, but it's definitely not just like something worth doing on your own. you know?
No, I think like with something like Madden or something as iterative as a yearly sports title, you only really need to play whatever is considered the best of each generation, because I personally consider like the Xbox/PS2 era to be like the experience that I wanted out of a football game, and they kind of like have lost the magic they had going forward. So I do think that there's still like in yearly titles like that, there is still stuff to be found in the older games, but not in each year. You have to be a bit more. You have to be a bit more choosy when you do something like that. Something like this, though, where this is the most bare bones you can do surfing, the most bare bones that you can do skateboarding. Yeah, it's been overshadowed.
Right. Well said. I also just, one last thing on California games. Maybe I should have brought this up at the top when we were talking about California. I feel like this could have taken, obviously Epix wasn't going to do it, especially because they were making it for, dozens of platforms. And so they kind of just needed that, computer layout of the main menu screen. So this way it just easily translates to every home computer that they ported on and every other console that they ported on. But this should have taken the same skate or die approach of like, you're just walking around a California boardwalk and there's some cool like things to see. But then like when you walk over to the beach, you enter the surfing level.
Yeah.
Or, like, if you go over to the roller skating like rentals, then you do the obstacle course
they could have done a lot with presentation with this game that they just chose not to. It's a missed opportunity, especially now that it has been done before with Skate or Die. But yeah, that could have added a lot of cool nostalgia value here.
Yeah, it was definitely Skate or Die's coolest feature, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just having that little hub.
Absolutely.
Real quick on sequels and spin-offs, just want to say that if you liked California games and if you were Epix, it was obviously a no-brainer to take your best-selling one and make a sequel. So California Games 2 did come to the Super Nintendo and other platforms. So it is it is a little later, and it is with cool 16-bit fidelity, but it sold less than California Games, and so maybe again that's just like this one's just an anomaly, or they waited too long and the sports market had become more developed since Epix brought out California Games 2.
Yeah, I think by then, like, what year was it?
I'm going to say 92, but I'm not certain.
Okay. I mean, I think even by 92, there were much more specialized sports games that that had a lot more to offer. Maybe not, I don't know about any other, like, Super NES skateboarding games, but I would have to think so.
Yeah, it's actually 93 for the Super Nintendo, but 90 for computers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And
it's already dated then, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little strange, the amount of time it took. But, these are how these things work sometimes. And I also have to imagine that, like, it's the same strategy now. Like, Epix can't, like, come back as a company and announce California Games 3. Like, nobody was waiting for it. The market isn't there for it anymore. They can't do it.
It would have to be very innovative.
Right. Or, it's just like, just make a new kind of sports game. Like, don't even call it California Games 3. That's such, like, a weird throwback. There are certain games that, like, I know people get, like, hyped for and everything like that, but then there's so many other games that were, like, one-offs on consoles that just nobody is expecting a sequel for, Like,
yeah.
They're just not going to do it. There's never going to be a Jade Empire 2.
Oh, man.
Sorry, had to be said. Anyway, there might never be a Jade Empire 2. There is a California Games 2. And we're talking about California Games 1. And we're going to finish up this discussion by finding out if California Games is an essential game on the essential games list. Sean, California Games, does it get the California Games version of whatever the Olympic gold medal is?
I will say that California Games, I think the sales of this game actually do speak to the quality, because of the games that we've played, this is my favorite, at least so far. but without rehashing everything that we said before, this game is not essential, and a game like it will never be.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I land too. Not an essential game, but we were picking on them for choosing California, but I don't think that was the wrong choice. It wound up being a really cool idea to like focus in on that. Like I would argue, I was just being cheeky with spring and fall games. Nobody wants those.
No.
But maybe, maybe they could have done Alien games after this, or Mars games. Like that would have been interesting.
And make up their own sports.
Right. Make up your own sports on that aliens play and stuff like that, but that are loosely based on popular sports throughout the world. I don't know. It's like World Games, but with aliens.
Okay. I'd play that. I think
it could have, I'm just saying, like, they could have kept going with this. California games, while sounding like weird, I don't think like anybody back then was questioning it. I think nobody even knew, oh, well, I played winter games and I played summer games, so I have to get California games. It wasn't like that. This was just, oh, cool. Bunch of sports that are big in California. I want to be big in California.
I can't,
because big in Japan, big in California.
Yeah, whatever you say, Mike.
I'm just mixing sayings. There's another saying too, and that is that you can find NestalgiaCast on Twitter at NestalgiaCast. We post things all week long. We posted things about California games all week long. Can you believe that, Sean? We had a week's worth of stuff to post about.
That's incredible
on the Twitter.
I got to get on that. I got to start following NestalgiaCast.
Oh yeah, I mean a lot of the listeners write in and ask for your handle, and I told them you don't have one. So if you have one, tweet NestalgiaCast something, and maybe we'll retweet it so people can find you.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do about that.
Yeah, see what you can do. But you know what the listeners can do for us? They can reply to us at NestalgiaCast on Twitter and let us know what they thought of today's episode or any particular episode. Hey, if you're just working your way through the catalog now, weird that you started with this episode, go back to the beginning, go all the way through. JK, do it however you want. But let's say that you have thoughts on episode 90. I don't remember what it was, but I said something controversial, like every episode, and you're like, I gotta call Mike out for this. Well, do that on the Twitter. That's the best place to talk to us right now. We're posting new episodes every single Friday at 8 a.m. On the dot, too. So if you're getting them at like 8:30, that's on you, man. Like, they're coming at 8. Sean, you get yours at 8, right?
Every 8. Every Friday, 8, yeah. And also, I want to say that if you have any thoughts on any future episodes that we haven't done yet, and you anticipate us to say something controversial, I also want you to reach out to Mike, who handles our Twitter.
Yeah, lots of people, that's a good point, though, Sean. Like, a lot of people did write in about California games as a game that they remember playing but remember nothing about.
Huh.
Don't you think that that's an interesting, like, observation of, I certainly had games like that I rented from Blockbuster that I can't even remember the titles of, but I can kind of picture them, but I don't remember anything else about them.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of those. I can't think of any of them because that's the point.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But yeah, California games across the board seems to be something better left to the past. But maybe next week when we play whatever it is we're playing next. Don't ask me because I
think it's Desert Commander.
Desert Commander. Oh yeah, it's like back-to-back war games, right? We got Desert Commander next week, and then like Guerrilla Warfare the week after that.
Yeah,
right?
whatever.
Guerrilla War. Yeah,
sure.
Guerrilla War. But what's coming up?
What's coming up?
Episode 190, Mega Man 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, the long-awaited sequel to one of our essential games, Mega Man 2. I've heard good things, so we'll have to see.
We'll have to see.
And we'll have to see you next Friday when we play Desert Commander. Thanks so much. I'm Michael Esposito. You can find me at Esposito Film on Twitter. You can always find Nestalgia at NestalgiaCast on Twitter. Talk to you soon.